So we're about 3 weeks out from launch now, a bit more. And yesterday slash this morning was the review deadline, which I've been sort of thinking of as the biggest deadline, really. So that's the date at which we send early code out to reviewers and streamers and stuff like that, to give them plenty of time to like prepare coverage so that it can go live at launch, which is good for them and good for us. And so anything I really cared about in the game that needs doing has to be done by that deadline, because if it's not done by then it won't be in when the game is reviewed, um, and that would suck. And also, video coverage that's going to go up at launch will have been recorded from this build that we've just deployed. Um, and so if there's stuff in there where people are getting stuck, or like glitches or things that suck, or just features missing, that's kind of, it's going to go on our permanent record. So um, it's a weird deadline though, because it's scary for that reason of like it has to be done by this anything that's not done by the deadline just kind of is almost like it doesn't matter. It does matter, but it matters a lot less. Um, uh, but at the same time, it's the softest deadline there is, because you give people advance code, ideally 4 weeks in advance. It's more like 3.5 in our case. You do it not because it takes them 3.5 weeks to play the game, but because they're busy and they need to find times in their schedule, and it just gives them a lot of slack and flexibility as to exactly when to do it. Which means probably no one is playing it right now. Like, I would imagine there are very few, if any, who just immediately get the code and boot it up and start working. Um, so it's not that hard of a deadline. It's kind of like if something didn't go in yesterday, it can go in today. That's actually, we ended up sending the mail this morning. Technically, yesterday was the deadline, and even that was kind of like 2 days later than originally planned. Um, but this has also been the first deadline, I think, in the whole project where I started to have doubts that we could make it, not for time reasons, but for hands reasons, because, as I mentioned before, I have RSI issues. It's kind of ongoing, comes and goes. I went through a phase of, I had a really big flare up right on the day that I finished the script for the game, like when I wrote the last of the major key scenes for the story, and then you could sort of read the story through start to finish, even if it wasn't in game yet. That day I wrote like for 12 hours straight, from like noon to midnight. And not surprisingly, felt some strain the next day. And in fact, for the next like 4 days, no matter how much I rested, I couldn't get rid of it. So after that, I went on a big kind of spate of researching everything, seeing 4 or 5 different physios, RMTs, everything. Tried dipping my hands in hot wax, having electric shocks put through my body, acupuncture, just whatever. Anyone, said, well, have you tried this? And like, all right, let's try it. Nothing worked except for a certain pneumatic massager on my forearms. I already knew like a manual forearm massage that helped a bit, but the pneumatic massager was much better, and much easier to do. Um, and the time wrap that I made, which I've is on my site that I tweeted about, which is an automated activity timer, sort of break reminder. So it just sits on your computer, and you don't have to set it, is the critical thing. So if you have been using your computer for 45 minutes, it pings, and you can customize how long you're allowed to work for, and how long the breaks need to be before it will calm down. That's been a godsend. And there was a time, I swear, like a month, 6 weeks ago, where I had a moment of like, oh wait, I'm not having to actually think about this anymore. Like, it's not a problem anymore. I don't have the pain. I'm taking the breaks at the same intervals, and that has solved it basically. Um, and then it came back. There's an obvious cause. I'll try not to spend too much time on just the health side of things, but around June 10th, which is when we were in the PC Gaming Show, the 2 weekends sort of, I think, leading up to that, or first the weekend of or the weekend before, um, I had to work both weekends. There was just like unavoidable stuff that just had to be taken care of, in some cases unforeseen problems, fires to put out. Um, and that, I felt the strain of that. That wasn't great. And I took time off when I could. I was after that, I couldn't take a week off, like that was out of the question, but I was just taking like half days off and a long weekend, I think, once, and I got to rest on the other weekends. Anyway, the thing that's weird about this week is that last weekend I took it super easy. I just didn't touch computers except like very briefly, and just avoided anything that would trigger it. And then on Monday, huge flare up. Don't know why. I did do some typing. I think typing is probably the leading cause, but whatever the reason, somewhat out of the blue to me, I suddenly had like the worst flare up I've had since this started this week. And this is review deadline week, which, as I said, is the most important deadline. And there wasn't a ton on my plate. We've been pretty good, you know. I'm not going to do a victory lap on the scheduling this project because it's taken 6.5 years so far. So not much to be proud of there, but one thing I'm a little bit proud of is we don't crunch, and like I say, this is the first time I've ever been worried that we wouldn't hit a deadline. Every actual hard deadline, we are well in order. We have everything, all our ducks in a row. There's no real scares. All of the scares have been like something external to us fucked up, and we need to deal with that. Yeah, and this one again, even this one wasn't time. Where I have time to do this thing, I just don't have the hands. My hands are not going to, and I don't want to like, oversell how much suffering I've experienced, because with RSI, when it starts to hurt, you fucking stop. You do not work through it. Like, that's the one universal thing you'll hear from absolutely everybody. Like, you can risk permanent injury if you work through it. So I haven't been experiencing extreme pain. I've been experiencing pain almost immediately after I start working, and then like, fuck, I've just got to stop. How long for? Like, and so it's been such a weird week of like urgent stuff, and I've probably like watched TV for about 50% of every day this week. I mean, maybe not quite that much, but like, there's time. I have to take breaks. I have to just not use computers, not use phones, not use iPads, just anything. You really need to just be, massaging and doing stretches and stuff like that, but also then just rest. There's no getting around that. And there just isn't much productive I can do resting, I can talk and do video vlogs like this, but I actually recorded a few, but the problem is, the reason I'm wearing a mic right now is if I don't wear this particular mic, this is the only thing I found where I don't need to do audio compression later on the video to if I just record on my phone and then I put it up, it sounds fine to me, but I always get complaints in the comments, and so the result of that is I record probably for each one of these you see there are like 3 other videos that I recorded and I just don't put up because I would have to go in and compress the audio, and that's just a hassle that I just don't have the bandwidth for most of the time, and I don't have the bandwidth for it now, and I certainly don't want to create any need for computer usage for myself, so I'm hoping this mic is enough, and if it's not, I don't want to hear it. I'm not doing anything else. So yeah, very weird week. Urgency, but a lot of relaxing, like a lot of disconnecting. I've had to sort of give video updates to my team rather than actually like writing to them. And I've had to use dictation software where I can, which is very imperfect and very limited in terms of like where I can use it. I have done a ton of research into this, and I've used Talon and stuff, but most of the sort of good universal solutions with a lot of like community support around them just can't recognize my voice. They just work like 60-70% of the time, and that is like, that's just useless. If it doesn't work 90+% of the time, you can't use it because you can't even correct yourself, right? So you spend more time using mouse and keyboard to correct yourself than you would if you just did it that way in the first place. Yeah, I've been getting through it, and we hit the deadline. It was fine. My timer, my customizable timer, usually 45 minutes on, 10 minutes off. I had it set to 10 minutes on, 3 minutes off. So every 10 minutes I have to get up and like do stretches, and I've been trying all kinds of stuff. Like it's been a little bit rough. So on Monday with the flare up, I just couldn't get rid of the pain. None of the stuff that I normally works for me would work. I think actually Tuesday was the worst. Like Monday, it was like, oh, I've done less than half a day of work and it's bad. And then Tuesday was like, any time I start, it's really bad again. I just couldn't shake the pain. And then one thing I'm not going to make any claims about what does help and what doesn't help because the data is so all over the place. There just aren't strong enough connections, and I don't have the bandwidth. Like I've been told to, keep logs and stuff, and I tried that for a while, but of course you have to do that with your hands. You can't really dictate a log of this stuff in a way that you can then later look at it and see patterns and stuff. And there's so much to log, there's so many variables, it's a nightmare. But anyway, one thing I've been trying this week is just general stretching. Not like I've got some hand stretches as well, but like also my shoulders and just my whole body, my back and my shoulder blades, and just doing all this kind of crazy shit. I've got like a full range conditioning or something video that I've been using every day. And you sort of like twist your shoulders. I found some interesting stuff. It's always like exciting when you find, oh, this hurts. The fact that this hurts, like my right arm is sore at the moment, and if I do this, I'm putting my palms up vertically. It hurts more in the right arm and less in the left arm, and the right arm is sore. So maybe that's related. Oh, maybe doing that stretch will stop it. I've been trying a bunch of stuff like that, and there's this kind of shoulder twist thing you can do that that is, when I do it, it's pretty uncomfortable. And so I'm thinking, maybe that's something that there's some tension there that I need to work out, and I should keep doing this. And I did, and then I put my shoulder on a joint doing that. So I could not catch a break, really. It's fine now. Although I went to the gym today because I skipped my workout on Tuesday for the first time in ages. I've had a very, very regular workout schedule 3 times a week for most of this year. And I skipped for the first time in months and months this week because it was just like I was having this RSI flare up, and just on the off chance that general tension, and just having those muscles be overly engaged could make it flare up more easily. I just can't risk it because if I got properly injured this week, I'm just fucked. So I skipped it then, and then I went to today's. This was a session at the gym, and I thought, well, I'm through the woods now, the deadline's hit, and that was an abundance of caution anyway, so I went to the session, and I think I might have slightly strained my left hand. I did, this is a personal training session, I did explain the full story to my trainer, and he, had me doing some stuff where you sort of wrap bands around your wrists so you're not using your grip so much, and in general grip has not been a big issue, but we did do some fairly intense stuff towards the end, and my left hand has been kind of sore ever since, so that might have been a mistake too. Everything I do is a mistake. I think this weekend I'm going to mostly just do absolutely nothing. I'll try and get outside a bit, but I think when I'm home it's just going to be like and this. So I'll move on from health stuff because that's taken up a ton of time and it's not that interesting really. But it's impossible to talk about the story of Tactical Breach Wizards and where it's at without that, because that's been a fairly key part. My team have been lovely. They've been really concerned and offering to help in every way they can, and it's been great. There is one lesson from this, and I think it's probably a good lesson in general, is there are lots of little processes and jobs that I do that I have to do on the game, and only I know how to do them, and that's not because they depend on my unique talents and no one could possibly do it. It's like a lot of it is shit work. It's really dull, awkward, fiddly, shitty, aligning UI shit. But just the system for doing that is something I built and I haven't explained it to anyone else. And what I realized over the course of this project, 'cause it's been a long one, as mentioned, is every time we establish a system like that, obviously it's a bit fuzzy. Sometimes you don't know exactly when the system is figured out or not. But there have been times when I'm like, okay, this is the system, I got it now. Every time that's the case, I've got to record myself doing it and talk through it, because then if I am ever out of action, I can pass it over to someone else and say, here's how you do it. But also for myself, like I would come back to the system sometimes and be like, how do you? I would fuck up and like delete something or mess with some setting I wasn't supposed to mess with. And like, well, pass Tom, damn it, where's the guidelines for this? And I know in like a bigger company, a more organized company, there'd be documentation. You make a whole like user manual for the thing you've created. There's just not the bandwidth for that in our company. And it wouldn't make sense because 95% of the time, 99% of the time, it's no problem for me to do it. But yeah, that would be a good practice in general. I'm very happy with where the game is. We've had this just talked about our moment in the sun in the Next Fest with the demo and everything. And we've been doing frantic waves of betas since then. So it's just like, players get like a week to play the whole game, and then we have a week to do something about what they said, and then the next batch have a week to play the game, and then we have a week to do something about what they said. It's been like a gauntlet of betas. We've never done this much testing this fast, but it's been really good. That's a really fast way of making the game better. I tweeted the list of levels with their percentage negative reports, and I was trying to get every level under 10% negatives. because most of them are to begin with, but then there were some problem ones, and I did it. I got all of them under 10% negative, and that's great. That's very smooth as things go. And then it's just been kind of generally good news from the betas. There haven't been any big scary things. There's like one issue, I'm not going to talk about it, but there's one sort of thing people are bumping on a little bit that I can't fix at this point. It's like a sort of structural thing. You'd have to go back to the drawing board basically to fix it at this point. And it's not, people aren't saying it like ruin their experience with the game. It's just like, well, if I have to nitpick, like this is the thing. And that's one of the only like trends we saw in the feedback, because what we do is we look at, I look at, ask people like what their favorite moment is, best thing about the game, overall impressions, lots of stat type stuff about like which enemies they liked, which levels they liked, and stuff like that. I can look at that stuff fine. I can't read the column that is what is the worst thing about the game. We always ask that, and I can't read it by myself. I have to have a meeting with everyone else so we can read it together, and we can like take it in our stride and laugh at the ones that are every test there's at least one person who's just like just hates it and or their complaints are just how to say this off the wall. They're just like, really, that you're that upset about that. And yeah, we get some weird ones, but we are genuinely trying to process the data and understand what the trends are and take them seriously. And when there's consensus, that's when you really look into it. And sometimes it's not consensus, but someone says something like, you know what, you're right about that, and we should fix it if we can. But this late, of course, like the last round of testing we did, it was all about, the last bigger deadline was like, when's the last time we can get beta feedback and still do something about it before the review deadline, which is the real deadline, because this is a scary one. When you fix things and no one tests them before reviewers see it, like you really have to be very careful about not changing much. And so that last round of feedback, you have this weird thing of like, okay, yep, can't do anything about that, yep, can't do anything about that, yep, can't fix that at this point. There's a lot of things where it's just like, changing that would be like, replumbing the game in a way where whatever you do, no matter how well you do it, that version then needs testing, and we can't do another round of testing. We already did that like 3 times. But yeah, what I was getting around to there is like as we read through the what's the worst thing about the game answers, there just wasn't much consensus. We didn't see the same things come up. It was all over the place. And I think that's a good sign. I think that's generally what you want to see. I remember with Gunpoint, that was the first time I did this question and this kind of survey, really. And I remember getting really down reading this. This is why I always read them in company now, is because I read them all by myself, and it was like, combat sucks, the puzzles suck, I hate the writing, I hate this, I hate that. And it was all over the place, and it destroyed my self-confidence, because it sounded like everything was wrong with the game. This wasn't one person, this was many different people, but you read it all one after the other, and it's like, oh, apparently it's bad on all these axes, apparently it's terrible. And the game came out to like 98% positive reviews. And it was like, oh, when you get negative feedback that's all over the place, that may mean the game's just fine. And if you ask people to pick what's wrong with it, they can't agree, because they're struggling to find any major issues. So that's really nice. And the scores are really good. It's been a little bit harder to judge the review scores, because we did some unusual things where for 2 of the rounds of the betas we only invited people who'd previously rated, like for example the demo or the first 3 acts of the game, because I didn't want to give the full game to too many people who weren't going to give us feedback, because it's quite a risk to give the full game to thousands and thousands of people, and more than half of testers don't give you any feedback at all, so we're just giving them a free copy of the game, and there's a bit of bad faith there in the sense of like they said they'd give us feedback and they didn't. I didn't want too many of those people to get the full game. That was a mistake. I won't do that again because it just added a lot of friction to the process. It was awkward in terms of separating the 2 builds. It was awkward in terms of timing. We wasted time doing that, basically waiting for them to finish Act 3 before they could get into Act 4. And as things went on and we were doing these frantic rounds of betas in rapid succession, I did feel like, God, I wish we had more time on this, and I wish I'd just given the full game out sooner so that we had more time with the feedback on the later acts. But we did enough with so many rounds of this stuff that we did get all the important stuff done. It just would have been smoother if I just let people play. And of course, like just the Next Fest reception and the wishlist numbers are so good at this moment that it's like we're not gonna tank the game's performance by giving, 10,000 free copies out. I mean, 10,000 maybe, but possibly not. And yeah, I'm just a lot more chill about that now. I don't think I needed to worry about it as much as I did. It was, I think, yeah. I think I was worried about is like, you don't want to lose your core audience, right? You don't want to give a free copy of the game to all of your biggest fans, because those, you really rely on those people to help you on launch day, because you need that initial wind in your sails, and then Steam can take it from there, and the algorithms, will surface you to everybody else, and then if your game is good, then or appealing, then it can continue to sell from there. But if you took away that initial blast of wind, then you just never hit that threshold, and you just go unnoticed. I was scared of that. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen now, because it seems like we just have enough wish lists, so that seems unlikely. Managing my expectations for how well it's going to do commercially is challenging at the moment, because it currently has 8 times as many wish lists as Heat Signature had at launch. And so I'm always trying to keep my expectations low. My expectations for Heat Signature were like, if it does a quarter as well as Gunpoint, I'll be delighted. That's the threshold we need to hit. And then it did slightly better than Gunpoint, so that was amazing. But we had nothing to go on there. It was just like, it's our second game. The wish lists existed, but we didn't have any wish lists for Gunpoint. That didn't exist back then, so I had nothing to compare it to. So I had no way of scaling that. Now we've got this really clear number that, like, the number seems to be saying Wizards is 8 times as popular as Heat Signature. It's not really saying that, because the wish lists have been inflated over the years. Like, wish lists are just a thing everybody promotes now, and people put more stuff on their wish list, and they buy a lower percentage of things they wish list. So the wish list conversion rates are much worse now. I don't know what that number is. I've tried asking around, and it's all over the fucking place. Like, one person's figure for that will be 8 times someone else's figure for that, and they're both, like, good games that reviewed well and similar genres, and it's just like, who the fuck knows? But yeah, it is hard to convince myself that the game is going to do, like, significantly worse than Heat Signature or Gunpoint. That you'd have to be pretty paranoid in terms of, like, what the conversion ratio is, which is, fine. But I just don't know what to do with that. Like, I'm just like, but I can't let myself believe, because believing it will do as well as Heat Signature, like, assuming that, just being like, well, that's our baseline, it'll do at least as well as Heat Signature, that's just presuming success, which you should never do. You should always allow that you may fail. So it's a good problem to have. I'm just in this weird state now where kind of like, that's been part of why, the beta feedback and just everything is we're just getting these big yeses from the world. It's like, yes, 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 yes. Reading some of the people's overall thoughts on the game, some of them are just like so glowing, it's amazing. I can't let myself look at that stuff for long. I skim it and I make sure I get a sense of it. If there's bad stuff in there, I want to see it, and if there's a consensus there, I want to get that sense. But if you just sat down and read it all, it would be like too much. But yeah, some of them are extremely powerful. Reading it is just like, wow, really? that's it feels amazing. My favorite thing to read, actually, I mean, I love that stuff, but like I say, it's like looking directly at the sun. It's like a bit too much light. I love light, but fucking hell. Not that they're all like that. I don't want to give the impression that everybody said that, but just, we do have a lot of people who really love the game. But my favorite one to read is the favorite moment feedback, because that's one we only added in the last year. But I was, Breach Wizards is such a story-driven game, and there are specific reveals in it. There are twists of sorts. There are moments that I just was excited to have an impact on the player. Mostly in a fun way, I think. Which is different to Gunpoint. I think the plot moments in Gunpoint are all pretty fucking dark. And that's not my preference now. I actually planned a lot more dark moments for Wizards, and as I built it, I just wanted to make something a bit more like hopeful, a bit more, just nice. I came to really like these characters, and just the general. There's so much, depressing shit in the world, but also like in this genre, we are pastiching modern military action thrillers. There's a lot of depressing shit just in that genre that we are having to navigate very carefully and find a way through it. That we absolutely do touch on some dark stuff in the game. We take it seriously, but we want the overall tone of the game to be fun, and so it's hard enough to keep it light with that stuff. You don't need to add in a bunch of like tragedies and stuff within the characters and things like that. Um, yeah, what was I saying? Oh yeah, and so because there are so many kind of big moments in the story, it is great to read the favorite moments things and hear those land. Like for every one of them has at least somebody picking it as their favorite moment, and some of them there are some surprising trends because there's a couple of moments as well. I've mentioned this before, and I don't want to be any more specific than I have been in the past. There are a few moments where you sort of need to have an idea. There's like in general, levels are designed to be solved many different ways, and the perks you've chosen are going to change how you play, and your own preferences and your own style is going to be very open-ended. But every now and then, there's just a kind of story moment where, rather than have it be a cutscene where someone thinks of something clever, we set it up so that, and then just wait for you to think of the clever thing. And we're very supportive around that, where like there's a hint button you can click and just find out, like, and we don't tell you the answer. We hint at it very gently. I think one of them has like 8 or 9 steps of hints. So like the first one is super vague, like you're looking for something like this, or think about this sort of thing, and then if you just keep browsing through them, you get to the one that just says do this. And so those moments, we very light touch. There's only 2 of them in the game, and like I say, there's plenty of support if you don't get it. I didn't want it to feel like on rails, but what I did want was to create scope for the people who happen to think of it, for them to genuinely think of it, and not to feel like we handed it to them. And yeah, loads of people had that experience, and there's one in particular that I thought this was going to be the harder one for people to get. It's much more of a lateral thinking thing, but so many people said like that moment was their favorite thing in the game. Just that them having that idea was the highlight. Hello, Jessica. Are you going to be in camera? Your ear is in camera in shot. Can I tilt slightly? No, your hard. It's actually quite a fragile system, so I better not tilt it too much. Yeah, that's super exciting to see. So from now we're 3.5 weeks out. I have 2 big tasks to get done. In a good month, that's no problem at all. And that one of them is very scalable in terms of how much work I put into it. It's the launch trailer. And we're not going to do one that's as high production values as the last one. So it's going to be a bit skunk works, is that the term? It's going to be a bit improvised, and it's just a question of how improvised. And then there's the special edition, like all the extras for that. I need to make those. And I've got some fun ideas for that. Again, can be scaled a bit, but it does need, for that there's like a minimum quality bar, sort of, it needs to be a substantial chunk of stuff. So, yeah, that's going to be fine as long as I can shake my current RSI flare up. And I think I just have to be super careful there. I just have to like really chill out this weekend, maybe even take Monday off. There's some parts of both those tasks involve recording voice. So I could try and do all that stuff first and just like really give myself as much runway as possible for my hands to recover. And yeah, hopefully that should be fine. But yeah, it's a very exciting place to be in. It's exhausting in a weird way. Like I say, I haven't been crunching. I haven't been working crazy hours. It has been exhausting to keep hitting all these deadlines. There've been so many deadlines one after the other, and we don't. For 6 years we had no deadlines really. It was just that's why it took 6 years, because I haven't generally thought it wise to give ourselves hard deadlines and push ourselves to crunch or cut. I have a sort of internal sense of like what this needs to be, how big it needs to be, how much of it there needs to be of it, and just how substantial an offering it needs to be for it to feel like we did justice to the concept. When you pitch a game, you're sort of promising something, and your gut sense of like what you need to deliver for that promise to feel satisfying is something that is different for everybody, but I just have an internal sense of that, and so giving us hard deadlines would have made us ship the game quicker, but I would have had to fall short of that bar, and I didn't want to. So that's why we haven't done that until now, and now we have done a ton. And one candle I'm burning pretty low, I guess, is like treats, because I have a stressful deadline, I hit it, and then I treat myself. Those deadlines are now so close together. Like this last week has been, scary and painful and all of those things. And so I went to friends for board games last night, and I drank quite a lot. And then today, like, deadline actually wasn't hit that day, so we kind of like properly hit it this morning. And like once I've hit it, I can finally give my hands a rest and just stop fucking typing and just relax. And I went out for lunch and had a few cocktails and dessert. And like, it felt like a good time to treat myself. But I'm realizing now, like, well, when I launch, I'm sure going to treat myself then. And in the time between, I don't know. I guess there's no like fixed milestones there, but I'm gonna have to like watch my intake of all the things that are bad for me, because it's not gonna let up. I'm also gonna go to PAX up after not long after launch, which is usually not like a healthy time. So yeah, I have to be careful not to overdo it there. But yeah, I mean, I can't treat myself by going on vacation, or taking proper time off. So you have to kind of get it in where you can. But it's exciting. I'm excited about launch. I'm trying to manage my expectations. I'm not burnt out. I'm not longing for it to be over. But I am longing to start on the next thing, which is another reason I really don't want to have any like permanent RSI issues. I want to be able to keep making games, and I've got multiple ideas for the next thing, and I just want to prototype some stuff. I just want to make little things and just see if they work and all of that stuff. So that'll be cool to get to.